わけでお前らスパイラル退治の依頼をかけて新しい幹部ソニアさんと勝負しろぐる。胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。うにゅ、無意味な対抗心。
Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we are going to cover another anime line of the day. We're going to be taking a line from the show Last Period, and we're going to be taking a line from the 9th episode of this show, and the line that we're going to be taking is going to read, I'll show you that just because your boobs are bigger doesn't mean you're stronger. And in Japanese, that is going to read, Mune no sa ga jitsuryoku no sa janaiってことを教えてあげるわ。
胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。
So this line of course is rather silly and comedic, but I do believe we will learn some decent things from this line, alongside it being rather transformative to say a bunch of other things that aren't as not serious, I guess. You can change, of course, boobs to something else. So you can say just because you have something like this doesn't mean that you're better than me or something along those lines, right? We're also going to see how the natural translation is rather quite different from the literal translation. So without further ado, let's just jump into this line.
胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。
So first up we see here, we are going to have a noun of a noun modification with the two nouns mune and sa. Mune means basically breasts. It can also mean chest. Usually when you say chest, you kind of imply the boobs on their chest, I guess. And the other noun word here, sa, is just going to mean basically difference. So mune no sa, noun of a noun modification, is going to mean basically difference of breasts. And of course the implied breasts here are the person she's talking to, the boobs of the person she's talking to, and her own boobs. So the difference between their boobs, or more specifically their boob size. So we are now gonna mark that noun of a noun modification as the subject. So we're gonna mark it with the particle ga right there you see right after it. Then we're gonna have another noun of a noun modification, and we are again gonna use the noun sa as the second noun. And for the first noun, we're gonna use the word jitsuryoku, which is gonna translate to basically true strength. And so this kind of first clause that we have here, it doesn't really have a verb, I guess you could say. This is basically just a simple sentence construction of saying this noun is this noun. This is this, in which case kind of is acts as the verb, I guess. So mune no sa ga jitsuryoku no sa is going to mean basically difference between breasts is the difference between our strength or our true power or whatever. We are actually going to want to say the opposite, or the speaker here is going to want to say the opposite because that's what she believes in. So she adds jyanai right after that. So the difference between our breasts isn't the difference between our true power.
胸の差が実力の差じゃない。
And so that right there is basically a complete sentence. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark that in basically a quote. So we put the hard quote marker, the hard te right after that. And so again, that's basically just putting that in quotes or saying the idea of that. And right after the hard te, we have the word koto, which is kind of like also kind of doing the same. It's expressing that quote or idea as a thing. And now we can kind of add it on into another sentence. And so with the koto there, it basically turns it into a noun. It turns that whole quote into a noun. And so grammatically we can do things like, you know, mark it as the direct object. And that's what we're going to do here, because what she's trying to express is that she's going to teach her that fact or that thing. And so to teach is a verb, and so the direct object is that idea that breast size, the difference between our breasts isn't the difference between our power. And so we use the verb oshieru, which means to show, to teach. It's going to be conjugated into its te form, connective te form, here used in a grammar pattern that is basically a te form of a verb plus a giving or receiving verb to basically convey this idea of you do that verb as, and it's kind of like giving someone the action of doing that verb, or doing them a favor by doing that verb, or receiving a favor. Here we're using it with the giving verb ageru, which is used when you're saying you, the speaker, are giving something to someone else. And so basically the implication here with oshiete ageru is going to mean basically she's doing a favor of showing her this truth, this idea that boob size difference isn't the same thing as true strength difference. And that is actually gonna wrap up the sentence basically, with the exception of that last word right there, the wa, which is basically just a sentence ending particle, and it's kind of used to denote basically pretty feminine speech. It's kind of an exaggerated feminine speech that you see in anime a lot. So all together, once again, we have the line 胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ. And this is going to translate to, I'll show you that just because your boobs are bigger doesn't mean you're stronger.
胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。
That's the naturalized translation we have, but through our breakdown, hopefully you should see how the literal translation is quite different. It basically literally reads, I'm going to show you that the difference between breasts is not the difference between true strength, basically. That doesn't sound as natural flowing in English, so of course we go with that natural one of I'll show you that just because your boobs are bigger doesn't mean you're stronger than me, basically.
胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。
Alright, so that is the coverage of that line. Let's just really quickly review the grammar patterns that we came across. We had a noun over noun modification at the beginning with mune no sa, then we had another one with jitsuryoku no sa, then we had the negative nai form of the copula des, basically, jyanai. We marked that first half of the sentence basically with the hard quoting marker, the hard te right there. It was used in conjunction with the word koto, so te koto is basically quoting something that you said and kind of turning into this like noun that you can use grammatically inside of another sentence, but also kind of this nuance of like the idea of this, the notion of this, something along those lines. We had the te form of a verb with oshieru, which was turning into oshiete. Then it was used in turn with the grammar pattern that is the te form of a verb plus a giving or a receiving verb. In this case, we use ageru, which is a giving verb, to mean you kind of like do the favor of doing that verb for someone, or you receive the favor of someone doing the verb for you. Then we had the sentence ending particle wa, which is kind of an exaggerated way to show femininity in speech. Other than that, hopefully you can also see how this line is very easily transformable to say something other than, you know, boob size or even true strength. You can say just because you're taller than me doesn't mean you're better at basketball than me, or something along those lines. There's kind of an infinite number of possibilities. So with all that said and done, let's replay the clip one more time and witness how we have mastered it by following along perfectly.
というわけでお前らスパイラル退治の依頼をかけて新しい幹部ソニアさんと勝負しろぐる。胸の差が実力の差じゃないってことを教えてあげるわ。うにゅ、無意味な対抗心。
Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Anime Line of the Day. Remember, if there were grammar patterns mentioned for this line, they'll be mentioned in the description or the pinned comment below with links to the individual lessons on them. You can also probably find them in the playlist of our complete grammar video series shown on the screen right here alongside our anime playlist. And last but not least, don't forget to try to translate the bonus line we provided. Leave your translation in a comment below. Check out our Patreon, like the video, and subscribe. With all that said and done, see you next time.